I can still feel the weight of my sister's journal in my hands, the leather cover worn soft from years of her touch. The funeral home was packed with 200 people, all dressed in black, all murmuring condolences. My brother-in-law stood at the podium, his voice breaking as he talked about Patricia, about their life together, about moving forward. And then he said it, the thing that made my blood run cold. Patricia and I discussed this many times. She wanted me to be comfortable, to not have to worry. That's why she left everything to me. The house, the savings, all of it. She knew I'd take care of things. That was the moment I stood up in the middle of my sister's funeral and called my brother-in-law a liar in front of everyone we knew. Some people said I was brave. Most said I was cruel. But I'd do it again. Every single time. My name is Dorothy Hayes. I'm 67 years old, and until 6 weeks ago, I had a sister. Patricia was my baby sister, 5 years younger than me, and for 62 years, she was my best friend. We grew up in Greenville, South Carolina, in a house that was too small and too loud and perfect. After our parents died, it was just us, her and me against the world. At least, that's what I thought. Patricia met Tom Sullivan when she was 28. I remember her bringing him to my house for Sunday dinner, her face glowing like she'd discovered fire. Tom was handsome in that boy-next-door way. Sandy blonde hair, easy smile, worked as an accountant at a respectable firm. He was polite to me, remembered to bring wine, complimented my pot roast. Everything about him seemed right. They married a year later. I was her maid of honor. I held her daughter, my niece Emma, in the hospital when she was born 2 years after that. For 30 years, Tom was family. Until he wasn't. Looking back now, I can see the cracks. But at the time, I told myself I was imagining things. Projecting. Being the overprotective older sister who could never think anyone was good enough for Patricia. It started small. Tom would make jokes about Patricia's spending. She'd buy out Target if I let her. He'd laugh at family dinners. Patricia would smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Then she started asking me for money. Just little amounts. $20 here, $50 there. Tom handles all our accounts, she'd say. It's easier this way. I'm terrible with numbers. But Patricia had been a bookkeeper before Emma was born. She wasn't terrible with anything. When I'd suggest she have her own account, she'd change the subject. Tom knows best, she'd say. And that phrase, Tom knows best. I started hearing it more and more. About which house to buy, which car to drive, whether Emma should go to public or private school, whether Patricia should go back to work. Tom knows best. Tom decided. Tom said. Slowly, over the years, Patricia became smaller, quieter. She stopped calling me as much. When we did talk, Tom was always nearby. I could hear him in the background, asking who she was talking to. What about? Our monthly sister lunches became every other month, then quarterly. Tom needs me at home, she'd say. He's been so stressed with work. I tried to talk to her about it once. We were having coffee at her house. Tom was at the office. Patty, I said, using her childhood nickname. Are you happy? She looked at me with these eyes. Tired eyes. Sad eyes. And for just a second, I thought she'd tell me the truth. But then her phone buzzed. A text from Tom. Where are you? Just those 3 words. And I watched her face change. Watched her put on that smile. Of course I'm happy, she said. Why wouldn't I be? After that, she stopped inviting me over. 5 years ago, Patricia was diagnosed with breast cancer. Stage 2. Treatable but serious. I wanted to be there for every appointment, every treatment. But Tom said she needed rest, needed quiet, needed to focus on healing. Too many visitors will tire her out, he explained, so reasonable, so concerned. I was allowed 1 visit a week, 30 minutes. Tom would sit in the room the whole time, monitoring our conversation like a prison guard. Patricia beat the cancer. We celebrated at her house with a small party. Emma was there, 25 years old and working as a teacher. She pulled me aside in the kitchen. Aunt Dorothy, she whispered, I'm worried about Mom. Before she could say more, Tom appeared. Everything okay here? His hand on Emma's shoulder. Firm. Just fine, Emma said, her voice bright and fake. Just telling Aunt Dorothy about my new class. She didn't bring it up again. 3 months ago, the cancer came back. Stage 4. Aggressive. The doctors gave her 6 months at most. She had 8 weeks. In those final weeks, I fought to see her. Tom said she was too weak for visitors. I'd call and he'd answer her phone. "She's sleeping. She's not up for talking. Maybe tomorrow." I started showing up unannounced. Twice, he didn't answer the door even though I could see lights on inside. When I finally got in, Patricia looked like she'd aged 20 years. Thin, pale, but her eyes lit up when she saw me. "Dorothy," she said, grabbing my hand. "I need to tell you something." Tom cleared his throat. "Honey, you need your rest." "No, I need to talk to my sister." Her voice was stronger than I'd heard in years. Tom's jaw tightened. "The nurse said you shouldn't get agitated." "I'm not agitated. I'm dying, and I need to talk to Dorothy." Alone. For the first time in 3 decades, Tom left the room. Patricia waited until she heard his footsteps on the stairs. Then she looked at me, her grip on my hand fierce. "In my closet," she whispered. "Blue shoebox, top shelf, behind the sweaters. Take it. Don't let Tom see." Before I could ask what she meant, Tom was back. "The nurse needs to check your vitals, honey. I never got another moment alone with her." Patricia died on a Tuesday morning in October. Tom called me at 6 a.m. His voice was steady, controlled. "Dorothy, Patricia passed in the night, peacefully. She wasn't in pain. I drove to their house in my bathrobe. Emma was already there, crying in the kitchen. Tom was on the phone with the funeral home, making arrangements, efficient, organized, like he was planning a business meeting, not burying his wife. "We'll do a service Saturday," he announced. She'd want something simple, dignified. I nodded, numb. Then I remembered. The closet, the blue shoebox. I excused myself to use the bathroom but went upstairs instead. Their bedroom door was closed. I opened it slowly. The bed was already made, hospital bed gone, like Patricia had never been there. I went to her closet, moved the sweaters, found the blue Nike shoebox. It was heavy. I tucked it under my coat and went back downstairs. Tom was watching me from the hallway. "Find everything okay?" His eyes on my coat, on the slight bulge. "Fine," I said. "I just needed a moment." I left before he could ask more questions. In my car, I opened the box. Inside were papers. Financial statements from banks I didn't know Tom and Patricia had accounts with. Credit card bills in Patricia's name showing charges she never made. A copy of Patricia's will. The real one. Not the one Tom would produce. In this will, Patricia left the house to Emma, split her savings between Emma and me, and gave Tom only what the law required for a surviving spouse. There was a letter, too, in Patricia's handwriting, dated 2 months before her death. "Dorothy," it read. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and Tom is trying to take everything. He's been stealing from me for years. Moving money, hiding assets, forging my signature. I was too afraid to fight him when I was alive. Too tired, too sick, but please, don't let him get away with it. Don't let Emma think I didn't care. The password to my laptop is Emma Rose 2021. Check my documents folder. There's more. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I'm sorry for everything. Love, Patty." My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the paper. That night, I went through Patricia's laptop. Tom hadn't changed the password yet. In her documents folder, I found everything. Years of bank statements showing Tom transferring money from their joint accounts to accounts only in his name. Emails where he pressured Patricia to sign papers she didn't understand. A journal she'd kept, documenting every time he'd refused to let her have her own money, every time he'd screamed at her for questioning a purchase, every time he'd threatened to cut her off completely. In one entry from 5 years ago, she wrote, "Today, Tom told me if I ever try to leave, he'll make sure I end up with nothing. That everyone will think I'm crazy, that no one will believe me. He's probably right. Who would believe that the perfect husband, the devoted caretaker, is actually a monster?" I sat in my dark living room reading my sister's pain, and I felt rage like I'd never felt before. How had I missed this? How had I not seen? But I knew how, because Tom was careful. Because abuse that doesn't leave bruises is easy to hide. Because Patricia protected him even as he destroyed her. The funeral was Saturday. 200 people packed into Grace Baptist Church, Patricia's favorite place. Tom had arranged everything. White roses. Patricia hated white roses. She loved sunflowers. But Tom had decided. Tom knows best. I sat in the front pew with Emma. My niece looked destroyed, lost. She kept glancing at Tom like she needed permission to cry. The service was fine. Generic. The pastor talked about Patricia's devotion to her family, her kindness, her faith, things that were true but somehow felt empty. Then Tom stood to give the eulogy. He walked to the podium, dabbing his eyes with a handkerchief. "Patricia was my everything," he began, his voice breaking. "For 34 years, she stood by my side. She made our house a home. She raised our beautiful daughter. She sacrificed so much." I felt Emma stiffen beside me. Tom continued. "We talked a lot in her final days about the future, about what she wanted. Patricia was always so thoughtful, so concerned about everyone else." He paused for effect. "She wanted to make sure I'd be taken care of, that I wouldn't have to worry about finances or selling the house in my grief. That's the kind of woman she was, selfless to the end. I knew what was coming. I could feel it building like a storm. So I want you all to know," Tom said, looking directly at the congregation, his face the picture of grateful humility. "Patricia made sure everything was arranged. The house, our savings, all our assets. She left them to me, to manage as I see fit. She trusted me to honor her memory by living comfortably, by taking care of myself the way she always took care of me." He smiled sadly. "I know some of you might think it's too soon to discuss these matters. But Patricia and I were always practical, and I want to assure everyone, especially Emma, that I'll be selling the house soon. Too many memories there. I'll be moving to Florida, starting fresh. It's what Patricia would have wanted." Emma made a small sound, almost like a whimper. She'd grown up in that house. It was supposed to be hers. Patricia had promised. I looked around the church. People were nodding sympathetically. Poor Tom. So brave, so strong, already making difficult decisions. No one questioned it. No one thought it was strange that a man would announce his inheritance plans at his wife's funeral. I stood up. The blue shoebox was in my purse. Patricia's journal, her laptop, all of it. 200 faces turned toward me. Tom's expression flickered from surprise to something darker. Fear, maybe anger. I walked to the podium. "Excuse me," I said. My voice was shaking but loud enough to carry through the sanctuary. "I need to say something." The pastor looked confused. "Mrs. Hayes, this isn't really the time for—" "Tom," I cut him off, looking directly at my brother-in-law. "You're lying." The sanctuary went silent. Dead silent. You could hear the air conditioning humming. Tom's face went red. "Dorothy, you're grief-stricken. I understand. But this is wildly inappropriate." "What's inappropriate?" I said, pulling papers from my purse. "Is you standing at my sister's funeral and lying about her wishes to steal from your own daughter." Gasps rippled through the church. Emma grabbed my arm. "Aunt Dorothy, what are you—" "Patricia left a will," I said, holding up the document. "The real one, not whatever fake version Tom is planning to produce. In this will, she left the house to Emma. She left her savings to both Emma and me. Tom gets what he's legally entitled to as a spouse. Nothing more." Tom lunged toward me, his mask slipping completely. "You have no right. I have every right." My voice was loud now, angry. "I have bank statements showing you've been stealing from her for years. I have emails where you coerced her into signing away her rights. I have a journal where she documented your financial abuse." I turned to the congregation. My sister was terrified of this man. He controlled every penny she had. He isolated her from her family. He made her believe she was worthless, that she deserved nothing. And now, even in death, he's trying to take what little she managed to protect for her daughter. Tom's lawyer, sitting in the third row, stood up. "These are serious allegations, Mrs. Hayes. Do you have proof?" I dumped the contents of the shoebox onto the podium. Papers scattered. Financial statements, credit card bills. Patricia's handwritten journal entries. "I have everything," I said. Patricia kept records. She knew what he was doing. She was just too sick and too scared to fight him herself. So she asked me to do it for her. I looked at Tom. His face had gone from red to white. He knew I had him. Emma was crying now. Not gentle tears. Sobs that shook her whole body. "Daddy?" She looked at Tom like she'd never seen him before. "Is this true?" Tom tried to recover, tried to put the mask back on. "Emma, honey, your aunt is grieving. She's confused. Your mother was on so many medications at the end. She wasn't thinking clearly when she wrote those things. Stop." Emma's voice was quiet, but it cut through his excuses. "Just stop!" She turned to me. "Show me." I handed her Patricia's journal, watched her flip through pages, read her mother's words, her mother's fear, her mother's pain. The sanctuary had erupted in whispers. Tom's friends shouting that I was crazy, that this was disgraceful, Patricia's friends demanding to see the documents, the pastor trying to restore order. Emma stood up, still holding her mother's journal. She walked to the podium, stood next to me, and looked out at the congregation. "My mother," she said, her voice shaking but clear, "was the kindest person I've ever known. She never said a bad word about anyone. She always saw the best in people." She paused, tears streaming down her face. But she was also afraid. I see that now. I see all the time she'd flinch when my father raised his voice, all the time she'd ask permission to buy groceries, all the time she'd apologize for existing. She looked at Tom. "You made her small. And I let you. We all let you." Tom tried to approach her. "Emma, princess, please." She held up her hand. Don't call me that. Don't pretend you care. If you cared, you wouldn't be trying to steal my inheritance at my mother's funeral." The aftermath was chaos. Tom's family demanding apologies, Patricia's friends gathering around me and Emma, asking what they could do to help. The pastor suggesting we all take a moment to calm down, to remember why we were there. But I didn't care about calm. I'd spent 30 years watching my sister shrink, 30 years being too polite, too worried about causing a scene. I was done being quiet. Tom and his lawyer left before the burial. Just walked out of the church while Patricia's casket sat at the altar. The service continued without him. We buried my sister on a gray October afternoon. Emma and I stood side by side, holding hands, watching them lower Patricia into the ground. "Did I do the right thing?" I asked quietly. Emma squeezed my hand. "I don't know," she said honestly, "but I know Mom would have wanted the truth." That night, I got hate messages, emails, Facebook comments. Tom's sister called me evil. His mother said I desecrated her son's grief. Friends we'd had for decades unfriended me, posted about how I'd disrespected the sanctity of a funeral, how I'd chosen greed over family. There were a few supporters. Patricia's book club reached out, said they'd always worried but never knew how to help. My neighbor said he'd seen the way Tom talked to Patricia, had always felt something was off. But mostly, I became the villain. The bitter old woman who couldn't let her sister rest in peace, who had to cause drama even at a funeral, who probably made the whole thing up out of jealousy. The legal battle started immediately. Tom contested the will, claimed Patricia had been manipulated by me, that she wasn't in her right mind when she made those changes, that the whole thing was fraud. His lawyers were good, expensive. For 2 months, Emma and I fought. Depositions, court appearances, character witnesses. Tom's side painted me as controlling, Patricia as mentally incompetent, Emma as my pawn. They showed videos of Patricia from family gatherings, smiling and laughing, proof she wasn't abused. They had Tom's mother testify that Patricia and Tom had the perfect marriage, that I'd always been jealous. Emma started to doubt. "What if we're wrong?" she asked me one night, exhausted from another day of depositions. "What if Mom really did want Dad to have everything? What if her journal was just her being sick and confused?" I showed her the bank statements again, the dates, the patterns. "Your mother wasn't confused," I said. "She was systematic. Look at these transfers. They started 20 years ago, small amounts at first, then bigger, all going to accounts she didn't have access to. This wasn't confusion. This was theft." The turning point came from an unexpected source. Patricia's oncologist contacted our lawyer. She had something to share. In Patricia's medical records were notes from private conversations. Conversations where Patricia had disclosed financial abuse, where she'd asked about resources for leaving a controlling spouse, where she'd expressed fear about what Tom would do if she died. I kept detailed notes, Dr. Chen testified in the deposition. Patricia was terrified. She told me Tom had hidden money in offshore accounts, that he'd threatened to claim she was mentally unfit if she ever tried to access their savings. She asked me to document everything, just in case. The doctor pulled out her file. Pages of notes spanning 4 years. Patricia's words, preserved. He says I'm stupid with money, that I'd waste it all if he gave me access. He makes me ask permission to buy clothes for Emma. Last week he screamed at me for an hour because I bought the wrong brand of coffee. I'm not crazy. I know this isn't normal, but I'm too tired to fight anymore. Tom's lawyers tried to claim doctor-patient privilege, tried to get the testimony thrown out, but Patricia had signed a release, had anticipated they'd try this, had outmaneuvered Tom even from the grave. With the medical records, Tom's case fell apart. His lawyers advised him to settle. He got what the law required for a surviving spouse, 30% of the marital assets. The house went to Emma. The savings were split as Patricia had wanted. Tom moved to Florida like he'd planned. As far as I know, he tells everyone there his first wife died and her family stole his inheritance. He's the victim in his story. That was 6 months ago. Emma sold the house last month. Too many bad memories, she said. She bought a small condo near her school, started therapy, began rebuilding her life. We have dinner every Sunday, just the two of us. Sometimes she asks about her mother, what she was like before Tom. I tell her stories about how Patricia used to laugh so hard she'd snort, how she'd dance in the kitchen while cooking, how she'd stand up to bullies, fight for the underdog, refuse to back down from what was right. She was brave? Emma asks. I think about my sister, about the journal she kept, the evidence she gathered, the will she hid. She was terrified, I tell Emma, but she fought anyway. That's the bravest kind of person. Emma still gets messages from Tom's side of the family. They still say I destroyed their family, that I should have let it go, that I chose money over peace. Maybe they're right. Maybe there was a better way, a quieter way. A way that didn't involve standing up at a funeral and calling my brother-in-law a thief in front of 200 people. But when I think about Patricia's journal, about her voice in those pages, about her asking me to fight for her, I know I made the right choice. Here's what I learned in my 67 years. Sometimes protecting the people you love means becoming the villain in someone else's story. Sometimes honoring the dead means exposing the living. Sometimes the right thing is also the hardest thing, the messiest thing, the thing that makes everyone uncomfortable. I destroyed the peace of my sister's funeral. I took what should have been a day of mourning and turned it into a scandal. I made myself the crazy, bitter sister who couldn't let go, but I also kept my promise. I fought for Patricia when she couldn't fight for herself. I made sure Emma knew her mother didn't abandon her. I exposed a man who'd spent 30 years hiding behind a mask of the perfect husband. Would I do it differently? Maybe. I'd have tried harder to see the signs sooner, to intervene when Patricia was still alive, to save her, not just her inheritance. I'd have pushed past Tom's excuses and Patricia's denials. I'd have made myself more of a nuisance, more of a pest, more of a problem. But would I have stayed quiet at that funeral? Would I have let Tom stand there and lie about Patricia's wishes, steal from Emma, walk away clean? Never. Because that's what family does. We show up, we fight, we speak the truth even when our voices shake, even when everyone hates us for it, even when it costs us everything. I still have Patricia's journal, keep it in my nightstand drawer. Sometimes I read it before bed, her words, her pain, her hope that someday, somehow, someone would stand up for her. In the last entry, written 3 days before she died, she wrote, "Dorothy, if you're reading this, I'm free now. Free from fear, free from him, free from pretending. I'm sorry I couldn't be brave enough to fight him myself. Thank you for being brave for both of us. Take care of Emma. Tell her I loved her more than anything. Tell her she doesn't have to be small to be loved. Tell her to be loud, be strong, be everything I couldn't be. And Dorothy, my big sister, my protector, my hero, thank you for seeing me, for believing me, for not letting him win. I love you. Always. Patty." I destroyed my sister's funeral. I exposed secrets that should have stayed buried. I became the bitter old woman who caused a scene at the worst possible moment. Some people will never forgive me, but my niece has her inheritance. My sister's truth is known, and somewhere, I like to think Patricia is at peace, knowing someone finally fought for her, knowing she wasn't forgotten, knowing her voice, silenced for so long, was finally heard, even if I had to be the one to scream it.